yeah, we are here today to talk a little bit of, give you a kind of a transparent and experience in how we moved from co-located to remote in what we promised to be under an hour. There were some strings attached to being able to do it in an hour. But what do we mean co-located? Co-located is essentially the fact that we have offices and we have people working remotely from all over the world, from both the US and Europe. But we have this core development team that is located in our beautiful offices in Cyprus. And these offices are our pride and joy. It took a lot of effort to build, and they were, or they are, still are, a very important selling point for recruiting new people. So today the story is about how we made the decision and how it worked out to be such a quick decision to take and implement, and being able to get the whole team working remotely the day after the decision. Actually, it was not the day after, it was the weekend after, because the decision was made on a Friday. Not any Friday, it was actually Friday the 13th, for those who are interested in things like that. We announced the decision and everybody had to go home and start working on Monday from their place. Now, the reason that this was, we were able to do that is a combination of coincidence and luck and also good planning. The first reason why we could take the decision and be confident that the decision would work was that, in fact, a few months earlier, we had conducted a drill. And the drill was part of a business continuity plan that we put together, in that people went to the office one day and they saw a sign outside that the offices were completely burned and they had to work from their home or from a coffee shop nearby. So that drill actually gave us a lot of insight about things that could go wrong when you had to work remotely and on on short call. And because we found a lot of things from that drill and because we fixed a lot of them, it gave us the confidence to be able to take the decision to go fully remote during that weekend. Another reason was that because we had a crisis management committee in place, it made it very simple for us to know who would be involved in the decision and give the thumbs up from every department that was interested in actually going remote on short notice. Last but definitely not least is the fact that because our technical infrastructure was designed to support remote workers anyway, technology was the least of our issues. So off we went, MacBooks and iMacs in hand. People grabbed their dogs, some grabbed some flower pots and our goldfish that had to be moved and safely hosted during lockdown. So how did things go after the big decision and everybody got their MacBooks at home? There were some interesting findings. The first one being that people had to set up their own office space. And, when people had their own computers at back home, sometimes it was difficult to find space for the additional MacBook that they brought from work. Another interesting thing is the fact that I had a chat the other day of someone saying, really, I've got a desk and a sofa at my place. And I feel like, it's difficult to separate my work environment from my own personal environment. And what I suggested is, try different sides of the sofa. When you're answering business emails or you're having a break from work, just sit on the left-hand side. But if you are watching TV or having dinner, just sit on the right-hand side. I think it actually worked a little bit for a few days. I'm not sure how valid that advice was, but it certainly made a little bit of a difference. The other thing that people were reporting is that they felt an extra bit of pressure in having to maintain the company equipment at home. Now, one of the interesting observations of working the first few days from home were chairs. The chairs in people's homes were not really up to standard with the office chairs, so a lot of people had to go back to the office and grab their office chairs, bring them at home so that they could sit and work comfortably. The other thing that we were missing was testing devices. Last thing that anyone would think, but obviously very useful for support, for new development, for Q&A, and a bunch of other things. So those got stuck at the office, and we still haven't really replaced all of them. And last but not least, children. Everybody with children actually reported that they had a really tricky time in getting the children to understand that mommy and daddy are working from home. They're not home because it's the weekend, but that you shouldn't disturb. But anyway, this is the story that I just shared is essentially, the initial first steps of actually moving from the office and going to work. The juice of our story, I think, will be shared by Konstantinos, who actually interviewed a lot of people and is going to share a little bit deeper into the lockdown, how people reacted to that. So let me see if I manage to switch from that. There you go.
Am I live?
Hope so. Hope I wasn't talking to myself all this time.
I hope so as well. All right, so let me start sharing as well. Is my screen visible? Let me know if you can see my screen. All right, so anyways, I think you probably can, so I'm gonna start. Hello everyone, and thank you, Alexis, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. So basically, before this whole quarantine madness started, our team followed an open seating plan, which is similar to the one that probably many of you are used to from your own companies. And we can all admit that there is a lot of pros to this open seating plan, like improved communication, teamwork. But if you stop for a moment and notice a bit closer, there is such a big number of interruptions that comes with an open seating plan. At the end of the day, all of these small interruptions are so minor and so small, they're so harmless that you don't even really notice them. And we all must admit that, it's at the end of the day, it's such a huge relief to get an immediate response to a problem that you might, be experiencing, so that you can continue your work without any issues, without any bottlenecks. In our case, we noticed that this was going even a step further. We noticed that our sitting arrangement in the office was getting adapted according to who tends to interrupt whom the most. So, crazy as that may sound, apart from the obvious, team leads sit with the team, mentors and mentees sit next to each other. We even tended to switch our sitting arrangements depending on who works with whom on which project. These are all, things that we hadn't noticed until we went fully remote. But being remote and switching to that model, an initial realization is that, wow, I cannot actually see the person I want to interrupt right now. So I'm not sure, are they busy? Can I do that? Of course, people still did it because people still and always will have questions. But we have this new phenomenon now that, you bother someone once, and if they don't respond immediately, when is the right time to talk to them again? Should you ping them directly after, or should you wait for a bit? And, the bravest of us kept spamming our colleagues for an answer, but some of us tended to just drop the topic altogether. So this is something to think about. Obviously, less interruptions come with a productivity boost. But an interesting side effect that we noticed and many of our colleagues reported in our interviews is that they started suffering from what we coined as a break phobia. So feeling that they need to be always available to be interrupted by someone, they just completely stopped taking even loo breaks. So, that is another interesting finding that we had. Switching now to another topic, which is meetings. I'm sure the ones of you that worked in a physical office environment had huge experiences with organizing events with many attendees, talks, discussions. You always wonder, is this the right HDMI cable that I'm trying to connect my computer to? Did I send the correct invitation to everyone? Do I have remote attendees? And where the hell is John? We were supposed to start 5 minutes ago. So, all of these are issues we experienced as well. But now working, fully remotely has solved a lot of these problems for us. All you have to do is just press on a button. You're on Zoom, you become a window on a computer screen, and you can just start your meeting. And obviously, this has made all of us more punctual with attendance in meetings. Another habit that we noticed after going remotely that we used to have before is that we tended to organize our meetings on days when the biggest number of people possible were available in the office physically. And that tended to affect a lot of our colleagues that commute some days of the week to the office, because we have colleagues, all around Cyprus. So they don't come to the office every day. And these people noticed that their schedule was completely packed with meetings on these 2 or 3 days a week that they happen to be in the office. And you would agree with me that this is not the most productive use of their time. Having lastly interviewed our colleagues who always traditionally worked remotely since day one, we found out that they reported that they used to feel a bit cut out and disconnected from the office environment. And why? There was a lot of corridor chatter that was going on in the physical environment, and a lot of information was getting lost in the physical space. So people that were working remotely never had access to that information. Clearly, now that we all work remotely, we all feel more equal. Everyone has access to the same type of information. So everything works more smoothly that way. Now, another topic that I'm going to address is the one of team dynamics and team expansion or recruitment. The big switch to remote came mostly with some challenges in this aspect, but also with some great opportunities for us. Traditionally, we had some cases where we had to onboard people fully remotely, but that was not the norm for us. Suddenly, this becomes the new norm, and this gives a great opportunity to our HR team to actually reevaluate the onboarding process and adapt it accordingly so that now it can serve better both purposes, local hires and remote hires. So that was a great opportunity. Now, when it comes to attracting new talent, Alexis mentioned it already before. As a company, we spend a lot of effort, a lot of resources to actually build and decorate nice offices that attract talent and make people feel welcome, and happy to be at work every day. Now, when we try to recruit people remotely, we can't really, guide them through the office. We can only show them pictures and videos of what to expect when the pandemic is over. Clearly, it's not as effective, but it's the best we can do right now. But the switch to remote didn't just affect, the employees that were new or new hires. It also affected long-standing employees of the company in a way. This was challenging for HR in the beginning to understand, how comfortable people felt with the new situation. The decision was made very quickly. So one way to kind of try to be closer to the employees was to assign specific people from each team to kind of reach out to the colleagues, make sure they have everything they need to work smoothly, that they're happy and feel safe. So that was one measure we took. Another one was that we started organizing more one-to-one meetings, as well as at the end of each sprint, a nice company-wide review, retrospects, so that everyone feels more up to speed with what happens in other teams and people feel more connected overall. But speaking about human connection, there is one last aspect which is particularly important for me as a person working in marketing in a very traditionally creative team. Human connection for us is also a source of inspiration, right? And I did notice that we had a lot of little rituals and habits in the office that require this physical presence. Like we used to draw a lot on the whiteboards and, play with word trees and mood boards, which there are tools to do that online, but it's just not as effective, at least in the beginning. So another issue we had with inspiration was that for many of us, human interaction was vital also because we were getting new input, new perspectives. Being stuck at home, such a small, space as your room or your office, looking at one screen all day, one project, you tend to kind of like get trapped in your own head, if you know what I mean. You need that fresh perspective. A way that we figured out to kind of like temporarily tackle this issue was to invite more people in our ideation meetings or our design critique meetings. And clearly, I know that this is not the optimal way to do this. The goal is always to minimize the number of meetings for everyone. But right now, this still works for us. It's not something that we're probably going to keep, but it helps us move forward at this stage of transition. That's more or less all of the insights that we collected from our colleagues. So I'm going to pass the mic back to Alexis for a little outro, for a wrap up of the situation, and to just kind of tell you what the next day would look like.
Yeah. Well, I wish I knew what the next day would look like, but I've got a note here that says Command Z, sad. And what I mean by that is that, if we just undo, press a magic button and do it and go back to how we were before, it would make me very sad, because I think that we've learned a lot of things, a lot of new things. It was a good chance to try out things that maybe we wouldn't have tried otherwise. So I am sure I would like to keep a lot of the positive things that we found out of this exercise. If I was going to guess, some favorites would be, for example, continue to do Zoom calls, even if we are physically at the office and maybe from our own desks, instead of having to move to the conference room or the meeting room. Maybe introduce full remote weeks where the whole company just goes away and works remotely for the full week. I'm not sure yet. We haven't decided and we haven't discussed a lot of things yet, but I know for sure that, we are now more confident that we are able to work 100% remotely. And lastly, that we are not afraid to recruit people who prefer to work remotely instead of commuting to the office every day. So I hope we gave you, some inspiration with our own experience, and I'm looking forward to hearing your views and your own stories during the discussion part of this session. Thank you very much.